In the previous lesson, you learned about the most widely used resume format, the chronological format. In this lesson, you'll learn about two other popular formats. Remember, your resume is a marketing document, not an autobiography. Choose the format that best suits your marketing purpose. If you're changing careers or re-entering the job market, if your career has had setbacks or includes jobs in different industries, if your current job is not as impressive as your last one, or if your skills and accomplishments are more impressive than your career history, then a functional resume will likely be the right choice for you. You start with your header section, including your contact information and target job title. You then follow with your job objective or a summary of qualifications. If you're changing careers or re-entering the job market, your best choice is probably the job objective. But if you've chosen this format to highlight your skills and accomplishments, then the summary would be your choice. The next section is where the functional resume differs from the chronological. The idea is to take your achievements and competencies out of the work history section and put them together under accomplishments. This focuses the employer's attention on what you can do and have done, rather than on where or when you've worked. The idea is to take your achievements and competencies out of the work history section and put them together under accomplishments. This focuses the employer's attention on what you can do and have done, rather than on where or when you've worked. That lets you emphasize your competencies and demonstrate them through your accomplishments. Only after impressing the employer with your accomplishments and skills do you present your work history in a brief format with dates. This chronological list of your work history comes after your accomplishments, near the end of the resume but before education or other sections. By that point in reading, a reviewer will, you hope, be convinced that you are a candidate worth inviting in for an interview. The functional format is a good choice if you have had interruptions in your work history or have changed fields. These resumes work well if you're a consultant because you can emphasize your experience in particular areas for potential clients. By putting your work history later in the resume and putting the emphasis on your accomplishments, you can also focus on competencies that may or may not surface immediately from your work history. The writing style here is to list accomplishments under each competency area. Begin with the most important competency area for the position you're applying for. For example, here is a functional resume entry for a candidate whose competencies in business development are a key selling point for the position he's interested in. Notice the use of a bulleted list to make it easier for an employer to read quickly. This style is by no means limited to the functional resume, and in fact, it's recommended for all resumes. In this example, you can see how the candidate's list of achievements provided evidence of his competency in marketing and business development. But perhaps he achieved those accomplishments in different organizations or in different fields. The functional format lets him emphasize what he can do, not where or when he did it. Or let's say you've been working as a quality control technician for a pharmaceutical company. After a couple of years, you've decided that you want to be in a less structured and higher growth industry, so you pick the computer field. You want to get a job in technical support. Your resume should thus emphasize the skills that will support your desire to change careers. Now, in working through the questions presented in the first module, you note that along with performing technical laboratory tests, you also configured new databases, you upgraded and managed all the computers for a 25-person staff. You also performed computerized tests to ensure product uniformity and to debug product issues. Before your current job, you had 3 years' experience as a telephone medical sales representative. Your tasks included describing product specifications to consumers, many of whom had very little medical knowledge. You helped determine specific medical products for over 500 customers, helping them select the best products to meet their needs. In mulling this over, you realize you can show evidence of 2 major competencies that are important for effective tech support: computer know-how and communications. Not only can you perform technical tasks, but you can also communicate technical information over the phone to people who know very little about the subject. So you position your experience so as to make yourself a viable candidate for the job you want. You group your accomplishments together in their own section right after your job objective. You also order your accomplishments in terms of their relevance to a tech support position. Computer skills are more relevant than communication skills, and upgrading 25 computers shows more hands-on experience than performing computerized tests. The work history that follows this accomplishment section simply lists your job titles, the companies you work for, and the dates of employment. Remember, you choose the format that highlights your most marketable information, a format that makes your competencies jump out to a prospective employer during a resume scan. Your competencies are relevant, so you're a good candidate to select for an interview. The next format is a direct competency resume. This is a newer resume style and has a different look. The accomplishments are listed by competency. Using a direct competency resume can be a good choice if you already work for an organization that uses competencies and you're applying for an internal position in the organization. These resumes showcase accomplishments in each competency area, and the emphasis is focused on those competency requirements clearly identified for the position. The writing style here is to list accomplishments under each competency. Begin with the most important competency for the position you're interested in. Then the summary and accomplishment statements are written with a competency-based focus, as you learned in the second module. A chronological list of past positions is included at the end of the resume. Finally, a combined resume might be the right format for you. This format could work for you if your career history is quite linear and solid, but you also have a number of relevant accomplishments worth drawing an employer's attention to right away. The combined resume is like the chronological resume, except that you include an accomplishments section before your work history. This gives you a chance to point out your significant accomplishments early on. Examples of these formats are included in the readings. In the next lessons, you'll learn about special formats that may be more suitable to your job-seeking purposes. In the previous two lessons, you learned about the most widely used resume formats, the chronological and functional formats. In this lesson and the next, you'll learn about special resume formats. In this lesson, you'll learn about the skill resume format that is used if you have extensive experience in a specific area. You'll also learn about the CV format used for academics. In the next lesson, you'll learn about the formats used for creatives as well as other special resume formats. The first format we'll look at is the skills resume. You'd use this if you have extensive experience and qualifications in one specific field. In other words, if your background is so tightly focused that there's only one job title you could apply for without changing industries or taking a step backwards. Then you need a special resume format to draw attention to your unique qualifications. An example might be if you're a senior executive who has been employed in the same industry in one specific field. In other words, if your background is so tightly focused that there's only one job title you could apply for without changing industries or taking a step backwards. Then you need a special resume format to draw attention to your unique qualifications. An example might be if you're a senior executive who has been employed in the same industry for 20 years or more. Maybe you've been a senior vice president in the industry for 15 of those years. You can't go any higher unless you become president of the company, but the president isn't going anywhere in the near future. So the only job you can apply for is the same position in a different company. This situation might also apply if you're in another highly specific field like teaching, computing, or advertising. In this case, even a combined resume This situation might also apply if you're in another highly specific field like teaching, computing, or advertising. In this case, even a combined resume is not enough to really showcase your skills. So to show off your extensive background, you use a pumped-up version of the chronological resume. For this format, the summary section will take up roughly half of the first page. It will include the template elements you see here, namely the headline, the summary section, and a bulleted list of key competencies. You're already familiar with these elements from previous examples, but you can see here how this format allows you to focus a reviewer's attention on your uniquely strong qualifications. Here's an example where the template fields have been filled in. This candidate called out her key competencies under the heading Executive Leadership Competencies. You could use whatever heading is appropriate to your field. Then this candidate included a section, Track Record of Success. That section abstracts her accomplishments across a 20-year career. Again, the format presents the unique qualifications and high-level skills of the candidate in a manner that's easy to scan. You may include more optional sections in a skills resume to stress the fullness of your qualifications. A skills resume will likely run 2 or 3 pages in contrast to the 1 to 2 page standard resume format. The next format we'll look at is the curriculum vitae, or CV format. This format is designed for academics, college professors, deans, lecturers, and researchers. Private school principals or clergy may also need this format. The CV differs from a typical resume. A resume is a concise marketing document that presents those competencies relevant to that position. Standard resumes are usually no more than 1 page long, 2 at the most. They are typically accompanied by cover letters, which you'll learn about in the next module. In contrast, a CV is a fairly detailed overview of your life's accomplishments, especially those most relevant to academia, where CVs have their greatest utility. Academic researchers are often working on many projects simultaneously, so it's best to think of a CV as a living document that needs to be updated frequently. You can think of it as a running accomplishments inventory. If you're at the beginning stages of your academic career, your CV will only be 2 or 3 pages long. A more seasoned researcher's CV may run into double digits. Nevertheless, for an initial application, most experts recommend no more than 4 pages when submitting a CV for consideration. This is another way of saying that although the CV differs from a resume, they are typically accompanied by cover letters, which you'll learn about in the next module. In contrast, a CV is a fairly detailed overview of your life's accomplishments, especially those most relevant to academia, where CVs have their greatest utility. Academic researchers are often working on many projects simultaneously, so it's best to think of a CV as a living document that needs to be updated frequently. You can think of it as a running accomplishments inventory. If you're at the beginning stages of your academic career, your CV will only be 2 or 3 pages long. A more seasoned researcher's CV may run into double digits. Nevertheless, for an initial application, most experts recommend no more than 4 pages when submitting a CV for consideration. This is another way of saying that although the CV differs from a resume, you still tailor your CV for every academic application. You still analyze the job description and specification just like you would for a non-academic application. Your CV needs to present strong evidence that you fulfill the job requirements, just like a resume needs to provide strong evidence that you have the competencies required for a job. Highlight your academic achievements and research interests. Find out as much as you can about the research area you're applying to so you understand how your expertise complements the goals of the research organization. Spell out your qualifications, research, publications, and any other relevant information. Describe your contribution to publications, particularly high-impact publications. Include in your summary a statement of research interest. As with everything you've learned about interviewing and resume writing, don't be modest. In addition to summarizing areas of academic interest, a CV contains a reverse chronological list of publications, often presented in an appendix. Include journal articles, books or chapters of books, reports, and patents. Research experience is listed in reverse chronological order. Emphasize specialist and technical expertise, IT skills, plus any skills required for the job, including people and project management. Education is presented in reverse chronological order. Focus on higher education onwards. Include awards and scholarships. Include the name of your doctoral supervisor and funding body, if appropriate. Under funding, include awards for research projects or to attend meetings or conferences, and prizes. Include the amount of money allocated, where useful. Under teaching experience, include lecturing, supervision, demonstrating, curriculum development, seminar and group work, assessment, and any other relevant teaching competencies. This is required if teaching is in the job description. Under administrative experience, highlight any positions of responsibility, of event and course organization, committee membership, and other administrative responsibilities. You must include this section if administrative duties are in the job description. Under professional qualifications, list your membership in any learned societies or professional bodies. You should also list any teaching and learning qualifications. Under professional development, document your activities, including any training undertaken, specialist research methods or analytic techniques you've developed or learned. You might also include time management training, training in academic writing, or any research supervision you've received. Research supervision you've conducted should be listed under teaching experience. Your attendance at conferences and seminars should be documented. Highlight any invitations to present, to provide papers or posters. If you've given many presentations, you can include a separate section for presentations. Finally, include the contact and professional details of 2 or 3 referees. At least 2 should be academic. Be sure to ask their permission first. There you have it, 2 special format resumes, both of which, however, use the principles of strong accomplishment statements, powerful active language, and targeted focus that you've learned for all the other resume formats. In the previous lessons, you learned about the chronological and functional formats, as well as 2 special formats, the skills resume and the CV format used for academics. In this lesson, you'll learn about the format used for creatives, the format used for professionals, and that used for military personnel and for government employees. The first format we'll look at is the creatives resume. This is used for performing artists, actors, dancers, singers, musicians. But with a little alteration, this is also an excellent format for web designers or architects, even project managers. Really, for anyone who works under short-term contracts for specific purposes. In its classic form as a resume for performing artists, the categories documented are those that make sense for these artists. Union memberships, or more generally, professional memberships are presented, along with any special training. Roles on stage, on camera, and for television are listed. Generally, as a performing artist, you list your most prestigious roles or jobs within each category by date, leaving off the less impressive jobs. Any national productions you've been part of are listed, as are honors and awards. You'll often include a special skills section. For example, you might be able to juggle, do karate, you might have proficiency in certain dance styles or even languages. Anything that a producer or director could use. Now, while you may not be in the performing arts business, the creatives format is not limited to actors or musicians. Any profession where gaps in employment are common and don't need to be downplayed can benefit from this format. For example, if you're a web designer, you can use this format to market your expertise in web and graphic design to clients. Training would likely focus on specific courses, for example, in Illustrator, Photoshop. Special skills might be proficiency with HTML, CSS, or JavaScript. This kind of resume would likely serve as a cover to a portfolio of your work. You'll learn more about career portfolios in the capstone. If you're in advertising, you could use this format to highlight your expertise in art direction, in show design, or in product campaigns. If you're an architect, the Creative's resume format could allow you to present your experience working on design teams or on specific building proposals or projects. Any awards or certificates would fit into this format nicely as well. Finally, one more example of when a Creative's resume format could work for you would be as a fashion designer. Maybe you were featured in a magazine article, or your work is connected with a well-known brand, or has been featured in one or more shows. You could use this format as a consultant as well. The Creatives format is essentially a means to market expertise when the traditional work history chronology doesn't apply. The next format we'll look at is one used for professionals. For instance, if you're a doctor in the medical profession, or you are in the dental profession, or you are an attorney in the legal profession. You may have had the same job title for many years, but in these cases, the usual chronological account of experience is not appropriate. What matters in marketing your expertise are the specific accomplishments you've achieved over your time as a professional. The professionals format is designed to show the full roundedness of your vocation. Hence, it will typically feature summaries of your qualifications and accomplishments at the top of the page. Again, all the advice you've received about writing strong accomplishment statements pertain to this format. Depending on the priority you assign to them, your education and credentials will be presented next. You may feel they are less important than your professional experience and your professional affiliations, in which case these would be presented earlier in the resume. You would also want to document any awards, any honors, or professional activities you engage in, such as refereeing or editing a professional journal. Any publications you've authored would also be documented. Publications can also be included as an appendix to your resume. The common theme to these special formats is to use the front page to highlight what you want a reader to see first, your most important competencies in whatever area you're marketing yourself in. The next format we'll look at is one you would use if you needed to highlight your skills as a former professional soldier to a civilian company. You would begin with a summary of your qualifications, most likely emphasizing your leadership skills. This is one format where you might want to add an objective. Remember, we've said you typically use either a summary section or a career objective, but transitioning into the civilian world, you will probably want to include a position-specific objective in addition to your summary section. You'll want to present your skills and abilities as they're relevant to the position you're seeking. Similarly, you'll want to frame your professional experience as evidence of those competencies needed for the position you're seeking. You should be able to communicate competencies in leading others, in communicating and influencing, in preventing and solving problems, in achieving results, and competencies in self-confidence and stress management. A summary of your military experience takes the place of a work history in what is essentially a tailored functional resume. Remember that your military experience will be full of acronyms, code names, ranks, and references that most hiring managers will not be familiar with, unless they also have a military background. You will most likely need to make your resume more civilian-friendly. But of course, that depends on the position you're after. Finally, include your education and training. Again, focus these entries on that training that is relevant to the position you're seeking. The last format we'll look at are resumes for civil service and federal positions in the U.S. government. These provide the same type of information as professional resumes, but they often require that the information be put into a specific format. The U.S. government uses two major formats. The first format presents your KSA statements. KSA stands for Knowledge, skills, and abilities. These are the competencies that you've acquired, but the format is not condensed like you see in other resumes. The second format uses Ecq statements. Ecq stands for Executive Core Qualification, and these statements read much more like biographies than resumes. In the readings attached to this lesson, you'll find a list of resources you can use if you need to prepare a federal resume. You also find samples of these formats. As you can see, resume formats require knowledge about the specific items in presentation that best suits the marketing purpose of the document. This purpose derives mainly from the intended audience. Just as you've seen how advertisements are tailored to specific audiences, your resumes will be tailored to the specific decision makers that are judging your potential fit to a position in their organization. In the next lesson, you'll learn about electronic, scannable, and internal resumes. The latter can be especially effective if you're seeking a promotion at your current employer.